ये सेल्पिप क्या है? Today we are going to understand the English proficiency test called CELPIP. It is widely accepted by IRCC and DHA for Canadian as well as Australian immigration respectively. So let's get started. So there are two kinds of CELPIP test. One is called the CELPIP general test, which we are going to focus on today, and the other one is called the CELPIP general LS test, wherein L stands for listening and S stands for speaking. Now this test is majorly focused on the ones who want to get their Canadian citizenship. So if you're applying for your Canadian citizenship, you'll have to take the general LS, wherein the format, the types of question, everything is exactly as the CELPIP general test. However, here we are just focusing on listening and speaking as the name of the test suggests. So the number of questions, the timings, everything remains the same. So let's get started with the format of the CELPIP general test. The modules or the skill sets that are tested are listening, reading, writing, and speaking in case of the CELPIP general test, which is majorly targeted at the audience that wants to get their Canadian PR, and also if you want to get enrolled into certain colleges in Canada. So the very first part of the listening test is called the practice task. It is also called part 0, wherein there would be one question and you will have to solve this question. It is not scored, it is a practice task just to help you get familiar with the software, become comfortable, and also test your headphones, because in case of the listening test you have to use headphones to listen to the audio and answer the questions. So in the practice test, make sure that you check your headphones. It's really important. If there are any logistical issues with the hardware, software, you're not able to see the screen, or there is some sort of freezing happening, or the headphones have some sort of static noise, or are not clear, or are not working properly, you can just raise your hand, call the invigilator, and they'll resolve the issue. And the total time for the listening test is for about 47 to 55 minutes, and there are 6 parts that you have to attempt. There is no negative marking in case of your listening as well as reading tests, which means that you can attempt all of the questions even if you are doubtful about the answers. That's fine, because you will not be penalized. If it's right, you'll get 1. If your answer is wrong, you'll get a 0. No negative marking in case of reading as well as listening. So the first part is to problem solve. Then you have to listen to a daily life conversation, information, news item, discussion, viewpoints. I'll discuss all of these things in detail when we focus on each of the modules separately. And the first one, problem solving, wherein there's a problem, there's a solution, you have to find the problem, find the solution. You'll have to answer 8 questions. In a daily life conversation, it could be a school setting, it could be a workplace setting, or a grocery store, and you have to answer 5 questions. Then you have listening for information, news item, just like a news channel, and then there's a discussion between 2-3 people or 4 people at times, and then you have to listen for viewpoints, which could be positive viewpoint or negative viewpoint on a certain topic. So you'll have to figure out which of the people in the settings are in favor of the topic and the ones that are against. And then there's something that a lot of people or a lot of students have confusions about, which is the unscored items. These unscored items will be found in the listening as well as the reading test. And in case of the unscored items, it is just like any other question. You would not know whether this item is scored or not. It's just that there is no marking for it. So even if you get the answer right, no marking for it, you will not get a score. Even if your answer is wrong for the unscored question, still you will not be getting any marks for it. Okay, now you might ask, what is the purpose of the unscored items? So unscored items are basically Paragon, that is the one that designs the CELPIP tests, way of understanding whether they should be keeping this question in the future tests or not. That's it. Okay, you don't have to stress about it. Just treat it as any other question, and you would never get to know whether the question is scored or unscored. Followed by listening, we have the reading test. The reading test, again, you started with the practice task wherein you check whether or not the screen is scrolling, you're able to read through the passages, you check the MCQ thing, whether you're able to, click on the MCQ options, blah, blah, blah. So it's just, again, to help you familiarize with the types of questions that you would be seeing in the next few parts. There are 4 parts in case of the reading test, and each of the parts would test some part of your knowledge. So reading for correspondence basically means it'll be an email or a letter kind of a situation wherein you have to answer 11 questions. Then reading to apply a diagram. So there would be a diagram, or it would be like a booklet or a pamphlet, which you have to read, understand, and answer 8 questions. Then you have to read for information, which is similar to listening for information. Then reading for viewpoints, which is again similar to listening for viewpoints. Here again there would be 2-3 people in the passage, and you have to figure out the positive, negative, and the neutral stance. Here you have to answer 10 questions, and reading for information you have to answer 9 questions. You get a total of 55 to 60 minutes to complete your reading test. Then we have the writing test. Writing test, there are 2 tasks. Task 1 is writing an email, and task 2 is responding to survey questions. I'm not getting into the details of this one. Again, I'll make a separate video when I start the writing module, and there is 1 question for each of the tasks, which has to be completed in about 53 to 60 minutes. Then comes the most exciting module, I would say, because it has a lot of peculiar questions. So as usual, there would be a practice task first wherein you'll have to speak to check the microphone. So in case of listening, you were checking the headphones. Here you have to check the microphone. Now microphone is an attachment to your headset. So you have to speak in that so that you can notice the bar on the screen moving. If you see the bar on the screen moving, it means that it is recording your voice. Otherwise, it will not be recording your voice, and if it's not recording your voice, you will not be getting any scores for your speaking module. So make sure the microphone bar is moving up and down as you speak, and that way you check your microphone. And if it's not working, you know the drill. You have to raise your hand, and the invigilator will take care of it. Do not hesitate at this point, because I've come across 2 or 3 students in the last about 10 years who have been shy, did not reach out to the invigilator, and eventually it impacted their CELPIP speaking score adversely. So if you're not able to speak properly, if you're not able to hear properly, if your voice is not getting recorded, make sure you reach out to the invigilator. The total time of your speaking test is about 15 to 20 minutes. There are 8 tasks. For each of the 8 tasks, there's 1 question that is asked. So the very first task, you'll have to give advice, then you have to talk about a personal experience, then you have to describe a scene. Describe a scene is basically an image. You will see an image on the screen, and you'll have to describe it in your own words. Then you have to make predictions about this image itself. Then you have to compare and persuade. So again, it is to do with certain pictures that you see on the screen. You have to choose one and persuade a family member or like a co-worker to be convinced of your chosen image. and then you have to deal with a difficult situation, expressing opinions, and ultimately describe an unusual situation. This is also an image question. So there are a lot of images when it comes to the CELPIP speaking test, which is why I called this module exciting. For the ones who are preparing for it for the very first time, you will come across certain absurd images as well in the last task. And I've already explained it, but I'll do it again. So, what exactly are unscored items? The listening and reading test may contain unscored items used for test development. These unscored items can be found anywhere within each test and will have the same format as on the other parts of the test. You will not know which part of the test contains the unscored items, so apply your best effort. Okay, let's move on to the scoring criteria. How do they score the CELPIP test and the corresponding CLB level? So the best part is the CELPIP level is exactly the same as the CLB level, and to score the maximum in your CRS for Canadian PR, you have to score a 10 in your modules, 10 in listening, reading, writing, as well as speaking. Now, 10 would mean, if somebody has already taken the IELTS test, 10 would mean 8.5 in listening, 8 in reading, 7.5 each in writing and speaking. This equals 10. And if you're someone who's aiming for CLB 9, it equals 8,777 in case of the IELTS test. So these are IELTS scores, okay, equivalent to IELTS. So 10 would be 8.5, 8, 7.5, 7.5, and 9 would equate to 8,777, which was so far considered the magical score. Now you have to score these band scores to ensure that you get the maximum in your PR. To know more about each and every module and the scoring criteria for listening, reading, writing, and speaking, I will be making separate videos, and those would be found in separate playlists. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and also hit the bell icon so that you're notified every time I upload a video. See you soon. Bye bye.